Are you a football fan? Have you ever found yourself wondering, what in the world was that ref thinking? Well, Mike D, the referee, is here to help you. Join me on Whistle Talk as I talk to professionals on the field and in the booth to help you understand what is going on inside the mind of a football official. All right, Whistle Talk fans, once again, time for another episode of Whistle Talk. Mike D, the referee, coming at you. And once again, I like to remind everybody, if you're enjoying what you're hearing, please hit those hit those subscribe buttons. Shoot me an email, Mike D, the referee at Gmail. Give me some feedback, positive or negative. I'm an official. I've got thick skin. So love to hear from the listeners out there. Love to hear from help with any questions and different things like that. Any type of content you're looking to listen to. But hit those like and subscribe buttons because it helps that silly algorithm that I still, to this day, know nothing about. But they say that that's what you want to hit. So with me tonight, after my nice spiel there, I have with me a unique guest from the NFHS. I have Miss Dana Pappas, who happens to be the Director of Officiating Services with the NFHS. Dana, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Gosh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk to you on Whistle Talk and love what you're doing with your podcast. But I agree with you. I have no idea what the algorithm is or what it does, but apparently it's important in the podcast business. So I guess I should learn about it, but yeah, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, when I retire and become a professional podcaster, maybe I'll learn it. But right now, I'll just keep on asking people to hit the like and subscribe.
Perfect. That's a good plan.
Yes. So Dana's joining us today from Indiana. Am I correct? You're based
correct.
out in Indiana?
Yes, sir.
So working out of the NFHS offices there in Indianapolis?
You got it. Downtown Indianapolis. Our building is actually connected to the NCAA building. So for a point of reference, if you have ever been in downtown Indianapolis, there's a White River State Park, and that's where the campus of the NCAA and NFHS are housed. We share a walkway with the NCAA and sometimes their cafeteria. So we do, we're neighbors.
There you go. Very nice. So, Dana, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, a little bit of your backstory, and what got you to the NFHS, if you don't mind?
Absolutely. So I actually spent 24 years at the New Mexico Activities Association office in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the NMAA is the high school governing body for athletics and activities in the state of New Mexico. There's 51 state associations across the country, all 50 states plus DC. And they are generally the ones who do anything with regard to eligibility. Some do officiating programs and coaches education, but any student athlete or activities participant is probably familiar with their state association. So I was at the NMAA. I was there really 25 years. So I was 24 years in the office and then an additional year where I did some work with them when I made the move to Indianapolis. So it was a 25-year career all told, and it was outstanding. For 7 of the years, I was the assistant to the Officials Association and boys sports. Okay. And in 2004, so I started in 1997, and in 2004, I was promoted to the position of Commissioner of Officials. So in that capacity, I oversaw the training and education programs for officials in the 10 sanctioned sports of the NMAA, which is the New Mexico Officials Association. Additionally, I was in charge of things that had nothing to do with officiating. So I oversaw the Activities Council and Student Leadership Advisory Committee, Scholastic Publications, and 3 music events, and Student Council, and English Expo. So definitely had wore a lot of hats, which is what state association staff people do. Yeah. So but it's now I'm in my 4th year at the NFHS. And one of the things I'm really, really proud of is the fact that I've served officials for my entire professional career, which is what I love. It's part of it's my lifeblood. It gives me purpose. Like, it's my why. So I love the fact that I get to serve a group of people who I think are often underserved. And I love being able to just advocate and support. And I'm probably not going to be the number one person teaching X's and O's of officiating. There are people who are much better at that than I am. But definitely, I love to be a voice, a support, and advocate for officials now across the country, which is why really taking the job at the NFHS was the dream job. It was doing what I love, but being able to do it for more people, which is really exciting. So the transition to the NFHS was interesting because we have sports that we didn't have in New Mexico. We don't have
Yeah.
lacrosse or field hockey or girls gymnastics. So getting exposed to some sports that I didn't really have a knowledge base about has been fun and challenging and exciting. But just being able to have conversations with officials from across the country and those state directors of officials has been a really just really fulfilling. I'm so lucky. They always say if you don't, if you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life. And I
Yeah.
think I've done that my whole career. So I'm very, very lucky.
That's awesome. That's great stuff. And I just want to clarify because I do actually now have an international base of listeners too. So I'm going to hold up one of the publications you're referring to. This is
There
our
it is.
football rule book, and there is the NFHS. So this is the National Federation of High School, and it's what me as a high school football coach. That's the rule book that I utilize. I know I think 49 of the states go by the NFHS, with Texas going with the NCAA rules
That's correct for
um,
football.
for football. But that is the National Federation. So for my people overseas, or I have a good group down in Mexico. So the
That's
National
great.
Federation of High School. So this is who we're working with. So this is
And
where we're
we're
getting our lead from.
absolutely. And the NFHS is really the organization that's the rules writing body for all of high school sports. So we write rules for now 18 sports. So the NFHS just had their first flag football rules committee meeting, and they're developing a flag football rule book for the first time, which is really exciting. That's a sport that's just blown up. So 18 sports that we write rules for, and work with the state associations to help to provide them the resources that they need. State associations are our number one stakeholder, and helping them help the populations that they serve is really the role of the NFHS. So it's a fun job.
That's awesome. So, as an advocate, and what you're saying for all the people out there, the support that you give to us on the field officials and the ECOs and the different things like that, you've seen the numbers with the officials kind of waver up and down, and unfortunately, lately more on the downward trend. Can you talk about the hashtag become an official and how that all came about, that campaign?
Absolutely. So becoming official was really, everybody really talks about the pandemic and says that the pandemic is what caused the shortage of officials, but we've been facing a shortage or on the brink of a shortage for probably 15 to 20 years. The pandemic just worsened it, of course. So we had a
Like
situation that was
everything.
already bad and that was exacerbated by the pandemic. So becoming official, I believe we're in the seventh year of that campaign, and it's hashtag become an official, but it actually is the highschoolofficials.com website. So if
Okay.
people are looking for like, how do I become a high school official? It should take you to our highschoolofficials.com, and a prospective official will go into that site, fill out their contact information, the sports that they want to officiate, and then it actually connects them with their state association. So as I mentioned earlier, we have 51 state associations, and each
Hmm.
state really administers their officiating programs differently. So we have to get them in touch with the people that are going to have the answers to the questions that they may have about getting started in their state. So they get an automatic response that says, "Thank you for your inquiry. Here's who you're going to be connected with. Here's a link to their website." But then the state association is the person or the entity that will actually contact that official. And then every month, I kind of do a follow up where I reach out to everybody from the previous month and say, "Thanks again for your inquiry. Have you heard from anyone?" So it gives me the ability to, things go to spam, or people don't
Yep.
understand, they don't know who the email will come from. So they'll delete it because they think it's junk, because we all get probably more junk than we get regular
Oy.
emails a day. So I'll go through and just ask, "Hey, have you heard back?" And if not, then I'll kind of work with them to make sure they get connected with the right people, because what I don't want to have happen is have somebody who's going, "Yeah, I want to officiate," and then they get lost in the shuffle because it's
Yeah.
so hard to find those people. So we want to make sure we're keeping them engaged. So, every month we get anywhere between probably 800 or 1,800 and 2,200 inquiries into that site.
Wow.
And then I don't know, we don't have any way to track how many of those people are becoming an official. We're trying to figure out some data collection for that. But
Okay.
having that many people show interest, and you definitely see times where it peaks. So Super Bowl is coming up, and everybody out there is going to think, I saw your episode, they're all going to think they could do better than the officials that are on the field. So we'll see this spike
Yeah.
anytime there's Super Bowl, NBA championships, World Series. Um, and then people realize it's not as easy as they think it is from the recliners. So it's just always easy. It's interesting to see where those spikes happen and how many people we actually sign up from there if they think better of it after they've on the Monday after the Super Bowl, where they're like, yeah, I don't actually want to do that. Not sure why I clicked on that link, but
Yeah.
it's just it's an interesting data set to look at for sure.
Yeah, and ironically enough, I am now on the board for my local chapter, and we had our first meeting about 2 weeks ago, prior to us speaking on the podcast here. And one of the things one of the chairs that I'm going to be a part of is going to be recruitment. So our cadet supervisor just the other day sent us the email list of all the people that have signed up through different types of sites, including through the NFHS site, where it was then filtered to our state association and in the state to our local chapter. So
Love
in
it.
the next couple of days, I'll be sending out some emails and some text messages and things like that, trying to recruit some more numbers because I've talked about it in some previous episodes where I work right now in the shore chapter here in New Jersey. We have about 17 full crews, but
Okay.
we're now going to be having, I think it's in the 20s of schools now that have lights. So looking for 20 home games, or I should say more than 20, but a potential of 20 games on a Friday night. So we're 3 crews short. So
Right.
we are still looking for our numbers have gone up steadily, not to where we need it to be, but hopefully we're getting some more out there.
And I think,
Um,
that's been the interesting thing is looking at those trends. Every year we collect the data from state associations as far as numbers of officials registered. And football's been kind of a continual growth sport for officials, which is awesome. A lot of that is because of the addition of flag football. So we're seeing
yep.
right now it's a combined registration in most states where it's flag or tackle. So since the pandemic, it's actually the numbers are up 5% since that 2018-19, which is what we consider our pre-pandemic numbers.
Okay.
But what we're seeing specific to football a lot of times is we have these officials, we're losing white hats. White hats are retiring, and some of the younger officials, they either don't want to or they're not ready yet to be that person that's doing the foul administration, doing the penalty administration. So talking about that mentorship element where it's how do we mentor people to get them ready and how do we make sure that they're trained adequately before they get out on the field. That's a real concern because our job as a local board or as a national association or a state association, whoever it is, our job is to make sure that we're setting officials up for success. And we don't want to advance them so quickly that they're in a varsity game and they have a terrible experience because they're not ready for it yet. So those are some real concerns when we talk about the numbers, because sometimes we're like, well, we have these numbers, but can we can we cover 20 games on a
Yeah.
Friday night? They're probably not ready yet. So that's just an ongoing conversation of how to combat those issues.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people have talked about if we can get the official to that 3rd year mark, then you kind of have
Mhm.
them hooked in. So we're looking to really get those mentors out there. So
Absolutely.
find somebody, give them a call. And I know it's been a common theme that we've had here on the show of finding good mentors or being a good mentor yourself. But yeah, these are the people we need to help groom the future and keeping everybody going with it.
Absolutely. And I think that's imperative because we talk so much about recruit, recruit, recruit. And now we're at a point where our numbers in all sports have kind of seen some growth. So now it's like, well, we have to pay as much attention to the retention as possible. And the
Yeah.
retention comes through mentorship, it comes through adequate training, it comes through support, it comes through recognition. There's so many different reasons why people leave officiating. It's not all just sportsmanship. There's a million reasons why officials leave. And it's funny because a lot of times we'll put social media campaign, we'll do our become an official, and people will make snarky comments online because that's what people do. Of become an official, it's like we'll pay them more. And I'm like, well, if you looked at the data, officials aren't actually saying that pay is the reason they're leaving. Like
Yeah.
that's such a low item on those surveys that we've done, so we've got the data about that, and officials are not leaving because of pay, they're leaving because of 50 other reasons. Pay is
Yeah.
on the list, but it's really low on the list, so it's just interesting how external perceptions are very different to the reality.
Yeah, and a lot of people think that we're getting paid from different entities too. So you always have that one, unfortunately, to think
Yes,
about.
sir.
Um, so now you were talking about your proximity with the NCAA. What type of relationship does the NFHS have with the NCAA? Is there? I'm thinking as an educator, is there co-curricular stuff? Do you bounce different ideas back and forth with each other off of some different rules and stuff like that?
So depending on the sport, there will be NCAA representatives. Sometimes they'll sit on rules committee meetings. We have a great relationship from an officiating standpoint. Over the past couple of years, they've hired an individual who is overseeing officiating in the NCAA. His name's Ben Brownlee. He and Anthony Holman at the NCAA do incredible work, and we've really been trying to work together to figure out some pathways and helping them to get some NCAA officials and give them
Hmm.
some leads as far as people who are ready for that level. And in turn, they're actually doing a program where a lot of people are using ref reps for training officials, which is an incredible online curriculum where the NCAA is now paying for seat licenses within colleges and universities for people to take those officiating classes. So while they're asking us, hey, send us some of your people that are ready for the college level, they're helping us backfill, which is because
Yeah.
we get really protective and territorial over our officials, but we want our officials to go on and work the next level. If that's their goal, like we want to help them get there, or I hope we
Yep.
do. But it's so great because the NCAA understands that if they're pulling from our pool, they have to help us fill it. And they're really doing a lot of good things as far as the seat licenses. They're helping us with some athlete to referee programs Division II is doing. So there's definitely some collaboration in the officiating space that I think is necessary because we have one pool of officials that everybody's drawing from. It's youth from below us, it's college from above us, and we're kind of wedged in the middle. So it's understanding that we have to work together, we have to collaborate, we have to come up with things that are helpful to officials to help them go where they need to and to help them understand those pathways. You're not going to call 1 year of high school football and call the NFL the next year. It's just not going to happen. So letting people understand the patience that's involved with advancing through the levels and letting them understand that you're probably seeing a higher level of schedule than you would have 10 years ago because
Yeah.
10, 15 years ago you wouldn't sniff a varsity game in your first couple of years. So it's just a changing dynamic and really trying to educate people about um, place and time and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and that's actually you hit on the reason why I asked you the question is because a lot of people will see me working in high school. Oh, how do I get to work? I'm a Giants fan here in New Jersey. I'm a New York Giants fan. Oh, how come you don't work the Giants games? I'm like, well, it's just because I put on the stripes doesn't mean that I'm ready to work in the NFL. There is a pecking order that kind of goes up, and starting at the high school level is a great spot to get exposure to get your wheels on the ground and everything like that. But if you are somebody who is ambitious and wants to move on to the next levels, you got to start somewhere, and this is a great area to start. So again, getting more experience, getting out on the field, doing a good job with what you do too, are all the things that are going to help you get that exposure if that is one of your goals.
And the NFL's been a great partner for us. We've started last year. We started an NFL pipeline initiative where we're working with various clubs throughout the country, and then with those clubs, we're working with the state associations where they're doing a crew of the month for the months of September, October, and November.
Yep.
And then we just selected our crew of the year, which is from Minnesota, and they're going to work all the Pro Bowl skills challenges, which is really cool. So every year, one crew gets selected as the crew of the year. But as it's a recognition effort, which is great. And some of the clubs are doing really cool stuff. They'll bring all the crews of the month and have them all sit together at the game and take them on the field and do photos. I mean, it's been a
Yep.
really special opportunity for them. And then as part of that, they're in the process right now of planning some training camps and recruitment fairs at NFL facilities. So that way it'll be, hey, come learn how to be a football official at MetLife Stadium or wherever the case may be. So it's kind of cool that we're working with them at that level because they understand the struggle.
Yeah.
And, you know, the NFL doesn't have an official shortage issue, but I don't want to speak for them, but we do. but they also understand that they need to help, pay it forward to our level so that they have that next pool of officials for
Yes.
the league in a few years. So I think that them kind of being that community partner has been it's been really cool to see. It grew from last year to this year, and we have more states and more clubs on board. And I was talking to the league the other day, and there's some more that are interested. So I just think that that's exciting for officials to have that honor of being a crew of the month and then maybe the crew of the year and having that Pro Bowl experience. So it's just it's exciting, and I think it's really important when the professional leagues are doing a give back to the high school level. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, no, I've actually seen it at MetLife Stadium. The different crews that they have of the month. Unfortunately, going to see a Giants game, which has been kind of difficult to watch these days.
I'm a Dallas
I still boo
Cowboys.
boo.
I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan, so I feel your pain. Like I got you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we're going to have to end tonight's episode. I do apologize.
That's fair.
Conflict
That's
of
fair.
interest.
Right? Goodness gracious. Oh man, the NFC East. I don't know. Two really good, and then the Cowboys and the Giants. So yeah. Ouch.
We got to help the other teams out there.
We do
Anyway,
our part.
so moving on.
That was a depressing little sidebar. Sorry about that.
Yeah. So, you brought up reps before. I actually just had Kyle on. Kyle is actually going to be one of the episodes a week or so before this show gets published. What other groups is the NFHS working with in order to help with not just the recruitment, but just with the educational aspect and the retention, everything that you've been talking about? I know Kyle and what he's put together through all the different sports. I mean, he's got me hooked. I'm a big believer in what he's got. But are there other different types of groups that the NFHS is working with?
So first of all, Kyle, reps, that team is absolutely incredible. It's been one of that's been a real game changer in the industry. It really has. What they're doing is amazing, and seeing the partnerships with school districts and how schools are giving PE credit or VOTEC credit. It's been amazing to see the growth of that company and to see everything they're doing. So I'm just super proud of them. And obviously we work closely with them. Really, we have our own NFHS Learn, which is where we house educational courses and videos and other materials for officials. A lot of state associations do their own training and come up with their own materials. So we're always very careful because we're a federation by design. So each state association is really in control of their own training and education for their officials. We give recommended best practices. We just did a couple of non-sports specific videos for communication and conflict resolution for officials. So we share all those out with states, and then they have the option to use it. One of the things that we're working on right now is actually a national training and credential program through the NFHS. So for years, we've had an NFHS coaching credential program. And when the question comes up of why don't you have one for officials, the answer is, I don't know why we don't. So we're starting, and that's
Appreciate the
terrible
honesty.
answer, by the way, but we're really excited about that. We'll have our first kind of just think tank whiteboarding session next month to talk about the feasibility and how to tackle 18 sports and what that'll look like as far as maybe some general ed for officials, because in some states they don't have a training program, and others it's done by local boards, and others they have them, but this could be something to supplement that. So I was talking to a director of officials at a state the other day, and he was saying, man, it would be great if we had something that if an official misses our rules clinic, they could take one of your courses as a substitute for that. So we just want to make sure that we look at our 51 state associations and really think about their needs.
If you're enjoying today's show and you want to show your appreciation to Mike D, you can buy him a beer by clicking on the link in the show notes or go to buymeacoffee.com/Mike D the referee. And as always, make sure to click follow and give 5 stars. Thanks for listening. Cheers.
And then also think about there's over 300,000 people who officiate high school sports in the country. How can we best serve them? So we want to make sure we keep the state associations as our stakeholder. What do we need, or what do they need from us? But then also think about the officials, and maybe because a lot of times I get, hey, I'm really interested in officiating football, but I don't know anything about, like, I'm a fan,
Mhm.
but that's all I know. Do you have a class I can take? And we have a couple of intro classes, but it's not deep enough that it really can help somebody. So we want to be able to say, yeah, if you're interested, take a look at this series of classes that you can take. And we're looking at from a standpoint of training, we're looking at from recruitment, but we're also looking at it for officials who move from state to state. We want
Yep.
we want that to be an easier process for them. So if they're moving from New York to Ohio, Ohio could go, oh, well, this person's already a level 3 NFHS official or whatever we come up with, where that's meaningful because they understand that now somebody's being trained maybe in the same language that they're speaking in their state. So we're excited about it. It's, we haven't even had our first meeting yet, but um, I think it'll be a good thing for officials and potential officials to really get that. And, Ref Reps is certainly going to be in the room for that
Yeah.
conversation because of what they've done. And like I said, they're working with us on a number of projects and they're just, they're innovative and they do some stuff on the tech side that's just with the POV stuff. I mean, it's incredible. So we're just making sure we have all of the right players in the room. The National Association of Sports Officials, or NASO, is our partner in this project. So we're really excited to have them with us because it's something that I think both organizations have kind of been kicking around for a number of years. And now is the time to come together to do that as a service to officials.
That's great. Yeah, I know that I used to coach my son's lacrosse team. We were talking before we started about kids sports, and I know with lacrosse, U.S. lacrosse used to have different levels for coaching levels and different things
Yeah.
like that. So that's a great idea with the officiating side of it too. So hopefully, good luck with that. And if there's
Thank
anything
you.
I could do to help
It's
out.
exciting and also terrifying and daunting all at the same time. So I think anything worth doing it, there's a little fear involved. So I'm okay with that. But we've got some great people on our little think tank, and then I'm sure we'll get a bigger group because it's a heavy lift. So we're really just trying
Yep.
to make sure we have the initial conversation and really come up with our game plan for what that'll look like and what it'll mean to our state associations and officials.
So, a question for you, and I don't know if you'll be able to answer this one off the top of your head, but I'm just thinking about when we were talking about shortages of officials and different things like that. What kind of percentage do you think it is of officials that are officiating multiple sports? Myself, I'm a football official, and that's all I'm officiating at the moment. And that's because of my kids' schedules and stuff like that. So I can't get involved. But I do know there are a good amount of people in my association that are also now either in basketball or wrestling now with the winter sports. And I'm sure I'm missing other ones off the top of my head. But then track and baseball and different things like that come the springtime. Do you know a rough range of how many people are officiating multiple sports or?
I don't have that information. I know from just my state association experience in a small state where, New Mexico only had 1,700 officials. I would say it was 30 to 40% that were multi-sport. The sports where we really saw the most like specialization, where that was their one sport, was wrestling and soccer. Those were the sports where you didn't see them doing a lot of other sports. We see a lot of overlap with volleyball, basketball, football, basketball,
Yep.
baseball, softball. So there you do see a lot of sports where it just, for some reason, it's just kind of a natural fit. But I don't know nationally. That's definitely some data I would love to see. And there may be information. I would have to go back and look. The National Association of Sports Officials did a huge survey that sits on their website, and it has like millions of data points. That might be
Hmm.
one of them as far as what that data set said. But if you ever have a day where you want to just go down a rabbit hole of data, check out the survey on naso.org because you can filter by state, by gender, by age, by education level. It's fascinating. One day
Wow.
I went to look at one thing, and like 4 hours later I was still in the survey. I was like, oh my gosh, did I eat lunch today? It was just one of those because it's just fascinating information. So they did an amazing job. It's their second round of the survey that they released in 2023. They had done one in 2017 and like doubled the number of participants. So
Okay.
it was clear to us. I sit on the board for NASO, and it was clear to us that officials wanted their voices heard because it was a long survey. It was like
Yeah.
45 minutes long. Who fills out a 45-minute long survey? over 30,000 officials who want their voices heard. So I think that
Yeah, I was one of
that's
them.
important. Good. And it was it was not a short survey, but that was such valuable data because it gives us information as far as what are we doing well, what could be doing better, what do officials really need, what are some of the pitfalls, what are some of the challenges. So it's just such a robust data set. I probably need to jump back in and look at some more because I don't know if I can ever get enough of that information. It's good
Ugh.
stuff.
Make sure you brew a big cup of coffee before you start.
Exactly. Make sure you're ready. Your eyes are ready to look at some data.
So now talking about the officials getting their voices heard and whatnot, and I held up here the rules book and stuff like that. So let's say me, Mike D'Ambrosio, I disagree with a rule that might be written in one of these manuals. How is it that I could possibly make a change and make my voice heard on maybe some type of, even if it's a minor tweak of some type of a play or just a rule on anything like that? Is there a way that I would be able to possibly influence you into something?
So there is a process. We have a very good, I think, we talked to NGBs who are like, man, your process is really good. So there's a rules writing process for all of our rule books, and there's a rules change proposal form that state associations fill out. So if there's an official who contacts me, for example, and they're like, hey, I don't like the way this is written in the rule book, my first step is always contact in
Yep.
this case, it would be the director of football in your state association and send them what your proposal would be. The state association is the group that has to actually give that rules proposal to us. But then that goes on to our director of football, who is Bob Colgate, and then they go through the rules process with the football rules committee. Football is very, very different. It's the only one of our rules committees that have a representative from every state association. So others are by section. So you'll have
Yep.
a section 1, section 2. Football has all 51. And then within that 51, they have different groups. They've got a safety and an officials manual and all these different committees. But officials, if they want their voice heard for a rules change, they would go through their state association. In addition, one of the things that we do at the end of a season is we send a survey out to our state associations to send to their coaches and to their officials to have their input. So if we see that 95% of officials and coaches are on the same page about the way a rule is written or the implementation of a rule, we're going, okay, something, we need to look at that. So those surveys are a great way for us to hear from officials, from coaches about the status of our rules, and are we in good shape? Is this confusing? Is it impossible to enforce? All of those things. So there's a couple of different mechanisms by which officials
Yep.
can have their voices heard, but as a federation of state associations, those have to come through the state office. So sometimes people send them straight to us, and then we send them back to whoever the director of the sport is in that state association.
Yeah, I was aware of that. I was with our local area. We talked about with the grounding rule before the grounding rule came into effect. So I was happy to see that as a former coach with the intentional grounding, the modifications that were made on that. So stuff like that is definitely something that I do know that you do listen to as a group, and you do hear our voices with that. So I just wanted to bring that up for the people out there that might not know that, because
No, it's good education because a lot of people have many people don't know what the NFHS is. And then other people think that we're exactly like the NCAA, which we're not. So it's just one of those things where I love being able to do this and just talk about educating people about our processes and how it all comes to be. So it's a long process, but I think that helps to make sure that it's a sound process.
now you guys have it difficult with football, because not only now you have the implementation of flag football coming in, so that's probably going to be its own separate rule book, but you also then have to incorporate 6-man football and all those other different things. So can you give a little background on how that all works?
So I don't have historically how that works, but if you look in the football rule book, it does have 11-man, it has 8-man, it has 6-man. It may have others. I just know those three because that's what we had back home. And then flag football, as I had mentioned, this is the first year we're writing a flag football rules book because of the number of states that are participating. It was definitely something that was getting requested by state associations. So I think 6-man, 8-man, there's just not enough information to make a standalone rule book. So it's just housed within the football rule book. We see the same where there's like track and field, for example, there's indoor and outdoor rules and cross country all housed in one rule book. So we don't want to do a rule book that's 10 pages long. So we just, if we can consolidate, we do. So, historically, I don't know when 6 and 8 man went into the rule book or if they've always been there. But I know that flag football will be ready to go for the fall. So we're excited about that. That's just been so interesting to see the growth of flag football, the growth of girls wrestling, and seeing what it's doing as far as bolstering officiating numbers. So I'm excited about it, but we also have to go, okay, now if it keeps growing, are we going to have enough officials to do both boys and girls wrestling and flag and tackle football?
Yep.
So that's always at the back of my mind. I'm excited, but also kind of cautious.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure here in New Jersey we are one year away from it being a varsity sport. So right now I think it's still club sport,
Okay.
but we're going with the rules. But I think next year it's full go. So
That's
it's
exciting.
coming. Yeah, it's
That's
coming.
really cool. It's huge. It's just, 10 years ago, if you would have asked me if the NFHS was going to have flag football, I would have been like, absolutely not. Now I'm like, oh my gosh, we're in it. Like it's really exciting to see, more opportunities for kids. And that's what it's all about.
Now, what kind of influence does the NFHS have on mechanics when it comes to the different sports? And again, specifically football, I know speaking with other people, a good portion of our country is still in 5-man mechanics mode until you get to the bigger games. Here in New Jersey, we're pretty much 6-person crews now.
Okay.
And again, 7-person for the big games. But is there any does the NFHS have any say or any suggestions with the mechanics of the games? Because I know we have our own New Jersey mechanic manual. That's why I'm asking.
So we do have an officials mechanics manual, and it has, I would have to look, but I know for sure it has 4 and 5 because there's still some states that are using 4, like in sub-varsity. I believe it has 6 and 7, but I would have to check. However, state associations can modify mechanics, and many do. So we'll see different states that are implementing a center judge or moving the umpires so that they're not in the middle of the field. So there's some mechanics variations that we allow states to do. We really do leave that up to them. And this past year, we started an agreement, or I guess revised an agreement that we have with Referee Enterprises, where state associations can customize their officials manuals. So that way, if they're like, well, I like the football mechanics manual, but we don't do this, and this, they can take those out and put whatever their mechanic is. So we don't require mechanics. The only thing that state associations have to abide by, and unless they choose not to, which would be like Texas football with NCAA, mechanics are up to the state association. So we give them here's our prescribed mechanics, and then give them the ability. And some states will do all but one mechanic or something, so that's not a big deal. But we really leave that up to the state, how many, because so much of that is based on numbers of officials. Can they have all 5-person crews, or do they need to use 4 sometimes, or can they do 7-person crews, or do they have to vary? So we don't make any mandates, but we do have some recommendations within those mechanics manuals as far as suggested mechanics for the state associations.
Now, you do have, and something that I do have a copy of is the case manual. Where do you get the different cases from? How does that come about, that manual, just of getting the different particular plays or instances that are referenced in the case manual?
So they can be, they could come from the rules committee, or they can come from questions our rules directors get a lot of. So if there's a lot of questions, a lot of need for interpretation on a particular rule, it'll come from there. We work with basically the members of that rules committee and ask them for input. It's usually, like I said, it's usually that what we're getting the most input on. So if the director of football, if Bob Colgate is getting the same question over and over and over again, that's probably going to be in the casebook next year. So we do establish some of those commonly misinterpreted rules and really the kind of the pain points. We do have the ability to look at on our rules exam. We could pull some data as far as maybe some frequently missed questions. So that could become a case play. So there's different mechanisms where we can get that information to provide those cases. And we've had discussions about, making sure we keep that fresh and add more cases to it, or take out the ones that no longer apply, because if we revise the rule book, then that's always going to affect the case book. So we just have to make sure we're always, very conscientious about that. And the directors of sport in our office do a great job. They with their committees and independently. So it's a lot goes into it. I think people don't understand the behind the scenes of the rules writing process, but it's cumbersome, but we just want to make sure that it's as good as possible. Is it perfect? We don't know, but it's always evolving. And we're always looking to just make sure health and safety of players are first and that officials can officiate it.
Yeah. And that I love going back to the case book and taking a look at all the different things. But yeah, the safety aspects are always the ones that we are going to highlight too, just as a local association. And it's great to see a lot of the rules that have been implemented in the recent years across the board in all the sports, getting to the safety of the student athletes and making that a main priority. So still while allowing us to do our jobs too. So
Absolutely.
now I wanted to touch with you on diversity when it comes to officiating, especially with football being a predominantly male dominated sport. Are you seeing the numbers of females getting involved in officiating? And I'm not even talking with the flag aspect of it, just in I guess say the boys game. I don't want to classify it anything, and also possibly minorities. Are you seeing any type of trends going on with females and minorities getting involved in officiating?
So I do think that there's been a lot of growth in females in football. And I think part of that is seeing more in the NFL, seeing more in collegiate sports. I know the Big Ten has really done a good job with their
Hmm.
officiating staff. They've got a lot of female officials. Um, we talk about this a lot from the standpoint of volleyball is a girls' sport mostly, and you see males officiating it all the time. Softball is a girls' sport, and you see males officiating it all the time. Girls basketball, you see male officials all the time. And it's just, nobody thinks about it. It's just, oh, that's who the crew is. But you put a woman on a football game, and all of a sudden people are like, oh my gosh, what is she doing on that game? And it's trying to kind of change that narrative of understanding she can work. Like at the end of the day, she's just an official. And getting people to feel comfortable with that. Like you shouldn't feel uncomfortable because there's a woman on a football game or a boys basketball game or a baseball game. These are people who love it. These are people who are trying to give back to their community. They're people who maybe grew up on a sport. My dad raised me on football. It's my love. Like it's one of those things where I wish I would have known about officiating when I was in high school because I probably would have done football. And
Yep.
it's one of those things where we need to get out of the habit of putting people in a box. Like, well, you're a woman, so you can't officiate football. And it takes some courage from assigners to really understand and evaluate officials and understand like, okay, it's a big varsity game, but she can handle it just like he can handle it. And getting over that, now we're just looking at last names. Like, okay, Smith, Jones, Jackson,
Yep.
and Pappas are all going to go work this game. And it shouldn't matter. At the end of the day, if people are willing to be officials, then we need to welcome people with open arms. If it's a woman, if it's a minority, wherever the case may be. And I think that we are seeing some increases in the female officiating population because women see that it's possible now. They
Yeah.
understand that we've got several officials in the NFL that are female and in collegiate Division I football that are female, and it gives them a sense of like, hey, I can do that too. And I think that's healthy. It's a different time, and this is going to be a weird statement, but officiating isn't for everybody, but it is for everybody because
Yeah.
it's something where it welcomes every walk of life, every race, every gender, everything. But not everybody's cut out for it. So it's one of those things. It's for everybody, but it may not be for you, but not because of what you look like. It may
Yeah.
not be for you because maybe you don't know the rules or you can't figure out how to apply them or you won't blow the whistle or whatever the case may be. There's going to be reasons why it's not for you, but it shouldn't be based on appearance. So I
Yeah.
think that that's something that there needs to be some shifting mindsets with individuals that are in leadership positions or assigner positions or whatever. If somebody is willing to go work for you and they're willing to learn and they can be coached and mentored and all of those things, then we need to, they need to have opportunities based on their merits and based on their abilities.
And I think what you said there is hugely important because, and I'll go back to you referred to softball. The only softball that I ever played was a beer league in college. So I hear it in football. Well, what does she know? She never played the game before. Well, I never played high level softball either, but I can become a softball umpire. And as you said, majority of umpires are males, and we
Mhm.
don't have that playing background that the females do. So if we can do it, why can't the females do it? It's the same thing. So,
And like I said, no
and
one questions it. If two men walk into a volleyball match that's girls playing, nobody ever goes, "Oh man, why are two guys working this match?" It's just, "Hey, there's the referees." So
yep,
it's always been so just counterintuitive a little bit. Like why does it matter? You should be glad that somebody is here to work the game for your kids. They probably took off of work early to be here. Like be grateful instead of worrying about, well, she never played, what can she know? You can learn a sport. Like it, there's growing up when I did, there girls didn't play football. They couldn't play football, even though I
yeah.
really, really wanted to. Um, but it didn't keep me from drawing up plays in the backyard with my dad. Like there was still a lot of that element. So I think that just accepting people for the fact that they want to learn and they want to be good at it and they want to be mentored and they want to be out there, like that's we can't shut people off just because of they don't fit whatever that norm is of what you think a football crew should look like.
Yeah, the norm should be the norm. Like it should
Exactly.
just it should be that's it. Like why do we have to
Oh,
fit into
cool.
a
You have
category?
stripes on? Let's roll. Like
Yeah,
that's pretty
exactly.
easy.
Um so with that, now let's talk a little bit about I'd like you to get your crystal ball now and look into the future. What direction do you think we're going? Where are we going with officiating in high school sports? Are we getting better? Are we kind of plateauing? Where's our future headed?
So I'm always cautiously optimistic. I think I use that terminology a
Yeah.
lot. That goes back to being a Cowboys fan, cautiously optimistic. But I think that we have the potential to do really good things in officiating. I think that the advent of the ref reps of the world and advocacy from NASO and the work that Officially Human is doing and all of these players that are really bringing to light issues within officiating. I think we're in a better place than we've ever been from that standpoint as far as collaboration around
Hmm.
officiating, which I think is really, really important. Where I worry, I think, is we have a lot of very veteran officials and we have a lot of very young officials, very new officials, and we don't have a lot of middle section. So when I talked earlier about that retention element, we have to retain who we have now, or we're going to be in a bigger bind than we're in right now. And
Yeah.
I don't want us to get there. So I think it's really incumbent upon state associations, local associations, um, NCAA, anybody who has officials and has authority over officials or the ability to train officials, they really have to understand that officials need to be heard, they need to be supported, they need to have opportunities. We can't just leave people to their own devices. Like giving somebody a rule book and a whistle and sending them to a game is not acceptable. We've got to make sure that we're doing things to get officials ready, to be able to deal with conflict, to be able to communicate and conflict resolution and all of those things. So I think if we could collaborate and make sure that we're providing a better atmosphere for officials, and like I said, it's bigger than sportsmanship. That's one reason why people either don't come
Yeah.
in or they quit. Crystal ball, I want to say that like, hey, we're going to be okay. We're going to get through this together. I don't know that. But I know that we have a lot of people that are willing to help. And we have a lot of people. We had 2 officials consortiums and a behavior summit with a total of over 100 entities that came together to address issues within officiating. And that's never happened before. So just that creating awareness and creating the need for officiating community, um, we're in a really good place. And it's just making sure that we get the wheels in motion in the right direction, in the same direction together.
Yeah.
So I'm again cautiously optimistic, but I do think that there's always going to be difficulties with the scrutiny of officials that you see on social media and how officials at the NFL getting scrutinized on social media does affect our ability to recruit and retain. So I think that that's that's something that we have to be really careful about, and we have to figure out how to continue to highlight the things that are good about officiating, because it's so easy to go down that rabbit hole of negativity. Like you read one bad thing about officials and then you just click on everything else that has to do with that, and that's just dangerous. So if we can tell their story, we started our What's My Why campaign to highlight what men and women, why they do it. Like why did they start? Why do they continue? What do they love about it? Why should you officiate? And I think the more that we can show that 99% of officiating that's good, because I truly believe it's 99% of officiating is really good. 1% is bad, but 1% of anything is bad. So I don't know why we should expect that to be different in officiating. So I think if we can change that narrative and really talk about who are these people that are at your games for football under Friday night lights, who are they, and what are they sacrificing to work for kids that aren't even theirs? Like, just understanding these are community servants, and no, they're not going to be perfect. They're human. Treat them respectfully, understand what they're giving up sometimes to be able to do something that not a lot of people have the intestinal fortitude to do. So I think that being able to share stories and talk about the good, and talking about the fact that, hey, this is your high school teacher who's out there working, or this is your town librarian, or whoever it is, because everybody has a story. Everybody has families. When you're yelling at an official in the stands, you might be sitting next to the referee's wife or kid, their 4-year-old. And would you want somebody talking about your spouse or kid that way? No, you wouldn't. So just be mindful of that respectful treatment of officials, and how what you say can be really damaging, maybe not to the official. They may, in a football game, they can't hear you. Like, honestly, the officials on the field cannot hear what's going on in the stands, but you could be sitting next to somebody who loves them, and be mindful of, would you want somebody yelling at your kid who's out there playing? I don't think you would. So I think that changing the narrative and really highlighting the positive is something that we have to do collectively, and do a lot of.
I couldn't have said it any better than you. That was fantastic.
Thank you.
Well, with that, we've hit a 50-minute mark here, so I don't want to hold you up much longer. And again, I appreciate you taking your time out of your busy schedule to jump on the
No
show.
problem.
One last question for you, and just any words of advice that you can have for anybody, any aspiring official that are out there. What are some last things that you can kind of plant that seed with them to help them grow?
Man, I think if you're a potential official, if you've kind of stuck your toe in the pond but you haven't jumped in yet, if you love football, if you maybe played the sport and have tried to find a way to stay connected with it, you can have a career in officiating. It's not sold to kids enough. Like, you don't talk about it. Like, as a player, you hear that you could coach, you could play, and that's pretty much it. There's this whole world of officiating, and that third team is so important. And if you love sports, if you want to stay connected, if you want to give back to your community, there's no better way. But I think the number one thing for me about officiating is the relationships, the development of your officiating family, and having this unique role and really special group of people that you get to work with. That's worth everything. You know Jerry Markwright, one of the most legendary NFL referees ever. He once said, for NASO, he was asked to do a 6-word memoir, and he said, "All my best friends are officials." And that was so true, because you look around and who are those people that celebrate your highs with you and help you through the lows in your life? It's that officiating family. And I think that it's undersold. Like, the merits of officiating are undersold. So I think if you're willing to learn, if you have a passion, if you love it, if you want to stay an athlete the rest of your life, there's no better place to do it than to be a football official, or whatever sport. I mean, I'm not going to discriminate. I'll take any official in any sport, but I think that, give it a chance, give it a try, find a good mentor, ask the questions that maybe you feel silly asking. It's okay, because everybody has to start somewhere. Don't be scared about it. Don't be intimidated by it, because you have to start somewhere. You have people who will support you. And just know that, especially at the high school level, you're giving kids an opportunity to participate. And that's a pretty cool thing.
And that's the biggest thing right there is we're still making a part of kids' lives. So, and that's
every night.
Yep. So, Dana, once again, I appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely.
If anybody else is looking for any more information, the website for the NFHS, nfhs.org is the website. Go on there. There's a ton of information for you out there about learning, coaching, officiating, all different aspects dealing with high school sports. So take a look at that website. Go over to the NASO website too. I got to dive into
Absolutely.
that one too that you were talking about. Reach out to me, reach out to Dana. We're here to help. I want to be that mentor for a lot of people out there. So let's keep this ball going and rolling along, and let's just keep on getting more and more officials out there and being that third team out on the field.
Love it.
Dana,
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thanks for your time. As Mike said, reach out to me. My email address is dpappas@nfhs.org. So it's just my first initial and last name, which I think you'll be able to see on the screen at nfhs.org. So reach out should you have any questions. I'm happy to help and happy to get you started.
Thank you very much once again. Truly appreciate it. And hopefully you're staying warm out there in the Midwest. I know you've been through a cold spell, but
it's a heat wave today. It was almost 40. So that was exciting for us.
There you go. Good stuff. All right, Dana, with that, I want to say thank you once more and good night to everybody, and look forward to our next episode. So let's keep it going. Keep those algorithms going. Hint, hint, wink, wink. Hit those likes, subscribes. And you also, Dana, what's your podcast?
Oh, yes, the From A to Zebra podcast. So we talk officiating. We take a letter of the alphabet every week and talk about a different subject that has to do with officiating. Usually not X's and O's. We're talking about all the cool behind the scenes stuff, but we're on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcast. Just look up From A to Zebra podcast, and me and Nate Acosta are the hosts, and we're having a lot of fun with it. So I mean, Mike knows he and I could talk about officiating for the next 16 hours, and that's what we do. So thanks for the plug. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And help our algorithm too. So
yeah. I'm going to throw it into the show notes. So
thanks,
all right,
Mike.
Dana, thank you again. Have a good night.
You too.
Bye-bye.